Hey there, friends. This is Forrest with AlphaGrad here, and today we're going to be doing Tech News Today. So, if you're new to this program, basically what this is we're taking a little bit of interesting tech subjects that we found throughout the week and really going over them to give a bit more in-depth and more understanding than just a face value. So, we do have three main subjects that I want to cover, and as well, we do have one extra subject that's a little bit less of tech news and more of just a little bit of entertainment, but I thought it was awesome that it came out. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and tackle it. So, the first one we're going to actually have here is going to be a ransomware attack. So, Foxconn Electronics, which, if you're not familiar with them, they are a major electronics distributor. They're based out of Taiwan, and essentially what happened with them is their North American facility, which is hosted out of Mexico, was hit with ransomware. So what ended up happening is that a specific group, and we'll just scroll down through this a little bit here, which was the Doppelpaymer ransomware group. They had focused on the North American side and found a ton of unencrypted information. And in that unencrypted information, they also were able to then encrypt it without Foxconn having the credentials to unencrypt. Uh, what was said in it, it wasn't really any specific personal details for employees or any financial information or anything like that, but just general business documents and reports. So this could be that they were hit with, specific um, market advantage documents were hit or anything like that. Um, However, the hacker group did come out and say like, hey, we didn't want to really block any workstations, really shut down the company. We wanted to kind of just get our ransomware, and just like pirates, even hackers have ethics at times. Now, there's been no news in terms of if Foxconn will be paying the ransom, but with the documents that are shown, it's more likely than not, I'd assume, because again, it could be market advantage. A lot of companies do not want to have their advantage sent out before they're actually able to uh, distribute it. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good thing to go ahead and pay any ransom. However, you have to be realistic about it. If a hacker group is able to put your servers under ransom and all you really have on there is a bunch of information about, for instance, company picnics, it might not be the best to pay them the ransom. If a hacker group gets your market advantage or anything else like that gives you that competitive edge in business, it might be a decision that you and your board have to weigh. And as well, especially if it has PII, personal identification, um, just any attacks, like for instance, healthcare, um, you may really need to get that information ASAP because it is a matter of life or death. So I wouldn't say that it's a good thing to pay the ransom. It continues to encourage it, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and more ambitious. But it does happen. Now, of course, there are some issues there in terms of legality. A lot of countries have embargoes from sending money to other countries, such as, the United States doesn't allow you to send money over to North Korea. So if a hacker group comes in from North Korea and demands a ransom, and your company is out of the United States, you legally cannot pay that hacker group. But there are ways to get around that. For instance, with submitting over your claim to a third party that specializes in this with a country that does allow you to send money over. So you may have to involve a third party if you need to get your information back ASAP. It just depends on the situation. But it definitely does not look like this is going to be going away anytime soon. Next up here, I thought this was pretty interesting and pretty awesome. So, for those of you that don't know, SpaceX has a subsidy within it called Starlink. What that is satellite internet. Now, satellite internet is not something that's new to the world. It's been around for quite a bit. It just never has really taken off. It's never really had a huge backing. It was kind of shoddy. A lot of people didn't support it. It was mostly used for government agencies that were doing things like, for instance, ranger parks in Yellowstone, and even then it wasn't too sure. And the speeds weren't that great. Nobody really liked it. A lot of organizations tried to get around it with WAN accelerators or mobile hotspots that had 4G built into it, but it still never really suited the purpose. A little bit ago, a few years, SpaceX actually launched Starlink, and it's been showing pretty impressive changes overall. So Starlink has dominated the field, more or less. It's made a huge array, which most areas will only have, I think it's normally like 30 minutes of downtime per day, which is wildly impressive for how many satellites are in the sky there. And as well, it's able to get a lot faster speeds than ever before because of the technology that's in the satellites. So they're actually lower in the atmosphere, and so it's able to allow for more faster speeds to be transmitted. Um, what's really cool about this is that the United States FCC actually just subsidized Starlink in 35 states. So, recognizing the need that a lot of these states didn't have great internet in rural areas, which, if you're watching from another country or even from New York City and have never traveled out, it's a lot of open land, and in some of those cities, you're going to see more cows than you do people. Now, saying that, it's extremely important to realize that it's still not going to beat out your fiber internet. Never will. Your fiber internet is always going to be faster. It's just the same as how if you're over Wi Fi and you have an option to plug in Ethernet, you should probably take that option for Ethernet because it's going to deliver faster, more consistent, and more stable speeds to you. But that said, this is a fantastic opportunity for a lot of people that are rural that didn't have another option at that point, to where they may now have the option to get, like, for instance, 30 up, 30 down, to where at the most before they were able to get 10 up, 10 down and had downtime hours of almost half the day. So I thought it was very impressive that Starlink was getting this level of subsidized funding. I mean, it was 886 million in order to subsidize for a lot of these states. So it's definitely going to be recognized as a way of the future. It's definitely going to be a way to kind of interconnect a lot of the country that previously wasn't able to be connected, and it would be interesting to see how it goes globally. Um, as well, a big thing I wanted to mention on it is right now, Starlink is kind of in a monopoly position with it. So they're able to really say that they they have no real competition that can beat them out. For the most part, a lot of this is going to be who comes into the market. So, for instance, with SpaceX specifically, we had Jeff Bezos then decide to do his space company that's slipping my name. So it's going to be interesting to see who takes up the rest of that market share to really get that level of subsidized funding from the FCC as well. Next up here, we wanted to talk a little bit about Apple. Now, anyone that's a gamer is probably going to be screaming and tearing out their head or their hair right now, maybe their head, who knows. But I thought it was pretty cool to see that Apple is continuously doubling down on their push into the hardware market, specifically with their high-end cores here. So, for those of you that don't know, Apple had previously been using Intel cores for a lot of their computing processing, and they've recently started to branch out of there with their what they're calling A1s, or their ARM processor designs. So we're not going to be seeing any of what this article talks about, which is insanely impressive speeds and insanely impressive amounts of cores, until likely 2022. But Apple has its eyes set on being able to even make 64 and 128 core designs for high-end pro machines. Now, I'm not going to go out and drop 4K on it, but what's the important takeaway to me is that this is giving a lot more competition in the market to Intel. It's making Intel really have to say, okay, what can we do better? And can we deliver this at a price that will sell? So there's a lot of up in the air to see what's going to be happening. But I'm really, really excited to see what Apple ends up pushing out. Uh, and I don't think anyone can say competition is a bad thing. It's definitely not. And we're going to be able to see a lot new uh, concepts, designs, and potentially pricing come out of this. So the last thing that I wanted to talk on before letting you guys go is that Cyberpunk 2077 officially has a release date. For those of you that haven't been watching Cyberpunk 2077, it's been delayed. It was originally teased back in 2013. It was supposed to be released already, and they pushed it back a little bit. It is going to be released on December 10th, and they did allow a lot of people to start getting their reviews in, and they're a mixed bag. So with the reviews, pretty much every single review, even good or bad, talks about how many bugs there are. So there's a ton of bugs that are just basically all right there for Cyberpunk 2077. And some of the reviewers are calling it out because it's been a game in development for 7 years. And to have that level of bugs, even though it's an open world environment, is still insane. Uh, there's not really any definitive answer. We may be seeing first day patches, who knows? But it's definitely interesting to see. I for one, will be waiting until it goes on sale anyway, but I thought it was a neat little aspect to kind of touch on here. But that really wraps up Tech News Today for us. So I really appreciate everyone tuning in, and feel free to join our Discord or subreddit, join in on our discussion. All right, guys, have a great one.